Time for opinions from public address man Russell Brown at Hard News there, and also the Media 7 show TVNZ7 back on TV screens this week. Good morning, Russell.
Good morning.
Talking about cooking, so you're cooking under the sun at Laneway on Monday.
Yeah, I did. Although I managed to get enough shade, I came through that quite well.
Yeah, was it? What a great day on the waterfront, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, I thought it flagged a little bit at times during the day, but certainly for me, it got better as it went along.
Yeah. Goodbye, big day out. Long live Laneway.
Yeah. I think, and it seems much more sustainable.
Yeah.
I mean, although it felt big and crowded, that was still only 6,000 people.
Yeah.
You know, which was actually fewer than were at the big day out, and that seemed empty.
And looking at the aerial photos from around about 10 to 4, I think they were taken, they probably could have fitted some more people in.
Yeah. Although, was it the Park Lane stage, the one down by the Six Pack?
Yeah, that was pushed for space.
Was a great space, though. I mean, it was really nice being there. There were a lot of people, and I have to say, being there for subtract as the sun went down was just magic.
Yeah. Did you feel like you were suddenly in a growing up city? You know, in some ways. Yeah,
and also big ups to the buses. I went and I met a friend in town who lives in town, and we took the Interlink bus down Queen Street, and it deposited us right at the door of the festival.
Excellent.
And then we walked out the door of the festival, got on the same bus, and went back up the road.
Yeah.
That was great, actually.
Easy.
I thought that was incredibly civilised.
And finally, the weather turned it on for us as well.
Yeah, indeed.
Although,
I mean, I think everyone agrees, and I get the impression the promoters themselves agree that the coupon system for drinks was not a success, especially to get a bottle of water from the bar.
Yeah.
I mean, that's basically people end up queuing for an hour for coupons and then queuing at the bar, and that's just not fair.
That's no good. But I guess the message, try to come early.
Yeah, indeed.
Right, now, a bit of controversy this morning. The appointment of former ACT Party President Catherine Isaac to lead a trial of charter schools has been described as disturbing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Catherine Isaac was actually number 2 on the ACT list, but, of course, ACT only qualified for one MP. Undeterred, John Banks, who is Associate Education Minister, believe it or not, has named Catherine Isaac to head a committee of 6 people who will oversee a trial of charter schools.
Crikey, Jack.
And they're not mucking about. Banks is expecting a charter school to be operating by the end of this school term. And you do have to wonder whether we're not just charging into the same sort of thing as national standards, where no one really voted on this. It was not put up as certainly a National Party election policy. And the ACT didn't even talk about it that much. And then all of a sudden it's happening, and it's being headed by someone who frankly does not have the experience to do so.
Well, the Greens are saying the trial now looks like a bit of a joke. They said it shows it's got nothing to do with education. It's all to do with the government's agenda to turn the education system into a business opportunity. Yeah,
you do have to wonder. Really, the belief in the merit of charter schools is basically an ideological one. The evidence is not that great. Some charter schools, particularly in the US, work. A lot of them don't. There was a big Stanford University study that found that it was something like 15% of students who went to charter schools did better. Another group did roughly the same, and the largest group actually did worse at charter schools than they would have had they stayed in the public system. It's not a magic bullet. And yet we've got the whole thing being headed by someone who really doesn't come from the world of evidence, who's a business person who has ideological convictions. I think it's worrying, frankly.
But Russell, aren't you just part of the negative spin of the media?
No, I like to think I'm all about the evidence, actually. And the evidence is patchy at best for these schools, because what you're talking about is private schools that don't have to adhere to the same standards as the rest of the system. And occasionally that works. A lot of the time you run into trouble, especially when you get religious schools involved. And that's what's going to happen. The first schools to put their hands up for this are going to be religious schools. And they've had huge problems with that in the UK, where in some neighbourhoods parents have had trouble finding a secular school for their kids. You've got schools teaching creationism. There are all kinds of things that can go wrong here. I mean, I'm all for more flexibility and innovation in the sector, but the loading up the gun with magic bullets, I think you might end up shooting yourself in the foot, frankly.
Yeah. All right, we're only just into February, and the relationship between the government and the Māori Party already on the rocks.
Indeed. Well, I think the Māori Party needs to be seen to be, as someone put it in the paper today, thumping the table. But yeah, this is another thing that didn't come up before the election. The so-called mixed ownership model was, an election issue, and National was returned to government, having quite clearly touted it as a policy. But it's only now become clear that the treaty clause, Section 9, is being regarded as incompatible with private ownership. So it seems like the best case scenario is that the government, the 51% government, public side of these SOEs that are going to be sold off, will be subject to treaty clauses, and the private owners won't, which seems messy.
Yeah.
And I think actually Grant Robertson from Labour has an interesting point. He's saying, well, and no one's talked about this, what happens to the social responsibility clause, which doesn't just affect Māori, it affects everyone that's in SOE legislation. Will that go as well? And that's kind of worrying.
Well, with the government still retaining 51% of ownership, you would think that those clauses would still have to be in place, and being the majority shareholder, they have the overall ruling. Yeah, and that seems to be what will happen. But it does seem an odd situation where the private 49% of these businesses aren't subject to the same rules as the public side. It seems messy to me. But we'll see what happens anyway. Yeah,
but Waitangi Day could be interesting.
Yeah, so and also just before we get to Waitangi Day, what do you have any insight on what's going to happen in Christchurch today? A possible revolution going on down there?
Yeah, I have no idea what's going to happen. We'll no doubt be discussing it on public address, though. It's interesting. It's one of the things I'm quite proud of, actually, is that we've pretty much always got a running thread on what's going on in Christchurch, and the degree of buyer's remorse about Bob Parker is prodigious. Because I don't think he was actually very good at the job of being mayor. He fronted very well during the earthquake crises because his background's in media. But
people with short-term memory problems remember that his popularity was probably the lowest of any mayor in the country just before the earthquake. And then boom, earthquake happens and he's the man. And now people are being reminded exactly why he wasn't the man. Yeah,
exactly. And of course the other controversial figure there is Tony Marriott, the CEO, who didn't exactly have an entirely unblemished record in Hamilton. And came into conflict with elected councillors and an elected mayor. Now the same story seems to be playing out again in Christchurch, and he's offered to give back half of his raise. But there seems to be a gap between pay and performance. Put it that way.
But so there's this protest at midday today. The protest is hoping for a massive turnout. If there's a massive turnout, boy, what's going to happen?
That will put significant pressure on that council.
Yeah.
On the other hand, do we want to see another ECAN story where the government appoints a commissioner?
Well, they almost already are, and they've got some kind of observer in there.
There's an observer in there already, so they've taken that step. I mean, that would actually be quite troubling. The council's dysfunctional, but I don't know. Well, you do have another. I would rather see another council election than to have the government roll over yet another, organ of local government.
They almost need another election now that the heat of the earthquakes is over, and the stark reality of who's actually in power and how good they are at their job is now becoming apparent. Don't they?
Yeah, I think so. I've got no idea exactly what they're going to demand, but maybe that's what will happen.
Indeed. Well, we shall follow that today. Thanks very much, Russell.
Brother, cheers, mate.
Russell Brown.